Hello students, here I am, your AM ma'am, and today we are going to begin with the topic voice. Now, voice, generally we say active and passive voice. But what is voice? So let's see what voice is. The voice of a verb may be defined as that form of the verb which shows whether the subject is the doer of the action of the verb or the action of the verb happens to the subject. Go through this definition 2 more times and then we are going to look at the sentences so that it becomes clear to us. It's very simple. Let's look at a few examples. Let's compare. The policeman caught the thief. This is in active voice. The thief was caught by the policeman. This is in passive voice. You see the verbs first. Caught and then was caught. Now, why the first sentence is in active voice? Just because I'm saying? No. Let's see the reasoning behind it. When the subject of a verb is the doer of the action of the verb. I said it. So let's see. Subject, that is the policeman. Doer of the action of the verb. What is the action? That is caught. So who is the doer of caught? The policeman. So naturally the verb is in active voice. Now when the action of a verb happens to its subject, the verb is in passive voice. What is the verb over here? Was caught. And my definition says action of a verb happens to its subject. This is the subject over here, the thief. So the action is happening to the subject. Was caught. The thief was caught. So the verb is in passive voice. Clear? Great. Let's move on. Children, now we have to know when do we use passive voice. It's very important for us to understand that. Firstly, when we do not know who has done the action. We don't know who has done it. Let's look at the example. My pocket was picked in the fair. So here we do not know who picked it. So we are using passive over here. Next, the action itself is more important than its cause. Now, what does it mean? Let's look at the example. India was partitioned in 1947. The action itself is very, very important and very, very serious. We are more interested in the action over here, actually, in this example. Let's move on. All right. When do we use passive voice? Continued. Let's look at a few more examples. When the doer is obvious. For example, the patient was timely treated. Now, patient being treated. Who will treat a patient? It is clear that it is the doctor. So you have to use it in passive voice. In newspaper reports and announcements, let's look at a few examples. West Bengal was lashed by a thunderstorm. The flight will be delayed by half an hour. Okay, it's an announcement. Generally, on railway stations, we hear these kinds of announcements. This is about the flight. So this is in an airport, but in railway stations also we hear generally, and it is very common that always our trains are delayed. All right, let's move on and see a few more examples. Again, passive voice usage continued. Incidents of social and historical importance. All right, the battle was fought at Plassey. So it's of historical importance and social importance, and the example is the battle was fought at Plassey. So I'm saying was fought. These kinds of sentences always take in passive voice. For describing a process. Children, I'm very sure that all of you have done writing a process in class 4 and class 5, isn't it? How to make tea, how to make pickle, how to make an omelette, right? So when you write a process, you always use the passive voice. For example, water is boiled, tea is put into the pot, and ... That is, we know what happens after this, isn't it? Get back here. So now children, important points to remember about passive voice. Now what are they? Remember children, intransitive verbs cannot be expressed in the passive. Very important for you to know. Intransitive verbs cannot be expressed in the passive. Let's look at an example. They laughed loudly. Laughed does not have an object. Now I'm sure you remember that what intransitive verbs are. Intransitive verbs are those verbs that do not take objects. Alright, so they laughed loudly. Laughed does not have an object. But remember, however, there is a catch. When intransitive verb is a prepositional or a group verb. What do I mean? They laughed at us. Laughed at. It's a group verb. The preposition at is retained. So we can change it into passive. What do we say? We were laughed at by them. Laughed is intransitive verb, but when you are using laughed at, it's a group verb over here, then this particular preposition will be retained. So we say we were laughed at by them. There's still more, okay? And also, remember there is one more, which is when the intransitive verb takes a cognate object. Let's look at the example, and I'm sure you will be able to understand what a cognate object is. I dreamt a dream. So I can get the passive. A dream was dreamt by me. He fought the fight. The fight was fought by him. So now, can you tell me what is a cognate object? Look at the examples again. While you look at them, let me explain to you. Dreamt, dream. Fought, fight. So basically, when I'm saying a cognate object, it means it's related to the verb. Easy? Let me make it more easy for you. The object is just the noun form of the verb. Same word. Verb form, noun form. Verb form, noun form. Same word. So these are called cognate objects. There are many such examples. You can always look up your dear friend Mr. or Mrs. Google and you will find all sorts of examples of cognate objects over there. Alright, let's continue. Important points to remember about voice. Continued. Next point. The main verb is changed into the past participle form and is preceded by the verb be. Preceded by the verb be. Let's look at the example. Jamal did it in active. So the passive is it was done by Jamal. Another example. I take tea. Let's go. Tea is taken by me. Now let's see what I said in the definition and what I'm saying over here. Okay. What I said over here in the important point and what I have given the example to you. Jamal did it. I said that the main verb is changed into the past participle. So did becomes done. Do, did, done, we know. Done. Done is the third form. That is the past participle form. So it becomes done. And is preceded by the be verb. That is the be verb comes in front of the past participle. Was. Okay. It is was. Again the next one. I take tea. The main verb take, it becomes taken, becomes past participle. And look at it, it is preceded by be verb. So over here again I have my friend be verb over here is. It is preceded. Now, how will we understand the tense? Now remember, the tense of the verb to be, that is the be verb, is determined by the tense of the active verb. So the next point is future continuous and perfect continuous tenses do not take passive forms. Again, future continuous and perfect continuous tenses do not take passive forms. Remember this. And the next point to remember is ditransitive verbs can have two passive forms. Of course, by the name itself, ditransitive, you can understand it means two objects, isn't it? So let's look at the example. In the active voice, we say, he told us a story. In the passive voice, what will we say? We were told a story by him, or a story was told us by him. Again, I'm repeating, we can say, we were told a story by him, or a story was told us by him. Alright? So here we see one thing, that since it's a ditransitive verb, which has two objects, we can write either of the two sentences. But children, always remember, the better way to write is an indirect object usually heads a passive sentence. Okay, an indirect object usually heads a passive sentence means we do know that when we ask the question what, we get the direct object, and when we ask the question whom, we get the indirect object. And these questions are asked to the verb, to the main verb. So over here, we were told a story by him. Better way of writing it. It's also correct. The next is also correct. Now, children, always remember, in case of voice or in case of narration, narration is direct to reported speech or indirect speech, and reported speech or indirect speech to direct speech. Whenever you're using this, told never takes to after it. Said always takes to after it, but told never takes to after it. We say I said to him, but when I say told, I will not say I told to him. I will say I told him. It's a massive grammatical error. Do not say I told to her, I told to him, or told to us. It's absolutely wrong. It is always told us, told him, told her. But if you say said, then you can always say said to him, said to her. Alright? After said, you can take to, but after told, you never take to.
Now let's move on to the next slide and see the final and the last point on important points to remember about passive voice. What does it say? The object of the active sentence becomes the subject of the passive sentence. I'm sure children, by now you have already figured it out for yourselves, but let's look at the examples to get a clear idea. Alright, the active sentence. The gardener caught the thief. So we see the gardener over here, it's the subject, caught, the active verb, and the thief is the object. Now let's look at the passive form. Let's see what happens. Clearly, the thief, which was the object in the active sentence, becomes the subject in the passive sentence. And it is changed to was caught, that is the be verb, and along with it the third form of the verb, that is caught. Catch, caught, caught. So caught is also the third form of catch, so it's the third form of the verb. And over here the gardener, which was the subject in the active sentence, becomes the optional agent, or you can also say the agent in the passive sentence. Now children, there are certain sentences in which this portion, that is the agent, can be dropped. So by the gardener can be dropped totally. We can simply say the thief was caught and the sentence would stand for itself. Clear? So now let's look at such sentences where we can drop the by, that is the optional agent. Why wait? Let's move on.
Alright. Now let's see the passive without by. Let's look at the examples. Active. They asked me my name. Passive. I was asked my name. Now the agent by over here, it is not necessary. The whole sentence actually is I was asked my name by them, but you don't need to use by them. I was asked my name is enough. Again, next. People speak English all over the world. The passive form. English is spoken all over the world. Of course, it will be spoken by people. It cannot be spoken by anybody else. Animals, birds, they can't speak English per se. Agent over here, it is understood. You don't need to say it out loud. We prohibit smoking. Passive voice of this particular sentence, we have always seen it in malls, in restaurants, and in many other offices. Everywhere we generally see the passive voice of this particular sentence. We see this sentence everywhere. What is it? Smoking is prohibited. Do you see smoking is prohibited by us written anywhere? You don't see. The by us you never see anywhere because it is not necessary. Smoking is prohibited. It can stand for itself. You don't need the agent over here. So, in these kinds of sentences, it is not necessary to include by them, people or us, etc., etc. There are certain other sentences as well. Alright, let's move on. The passive without by. Children, here it is very important that you learn it. First understand it and then learn it. Why? Because some passive verbs do not take by after them. Do not take. So if you write by in the passive forms, it will be wrong. Let's look at the examples. I know her. She is known to me, not by me. The news pleased all. All were pleased with the news, not by. Tears filled her eyes. Her eyes were filled with tears. His manner shocked me. I was shocked at his manner. Her behavior charmed us. We were charmed at her behavior. These are certain words which never take by after them. Alright, this is one of the most popular mistakes that children make. So now that you have seen this in this video, I'm sure you are never ever going to make this mistake. So on that note, let's move on. Alright, over here students, now let's see. This is me, by the way. This is your AEM ma'am. Okay? Students, let's see the change from active to passive voice in different tenses. I'm saying this, okay? Alright, let's move on. Present tense, simple present. Active voice, what do we see? He disturbs me. I am disturbed by him. He disturbs us. We are disturbed by him. He disturbs her. She is disturbed by him. So what do we learn from here? Am is our plus past participle of the main verb. Alright, so when you are using the simple present, this is for you to remember. The be verb either am or is or are with the past participle of the main verb. Let's move on. Present tense continued. Present continuous. I'm taking the same sentence. He is disturbing me. I am being disturbed by him. He is disturbing us. We are being disturbed by him. He is disturbing her. She is being disturbed by him. So am being, are being, is being. Look at the sentences. So what do we learn from here? In present continuous, am being, is being, are being plus past participle of the main verb. That's it for you to remember. Alright, let's move on. Present tense continued. Present perfect. Let's look at the sentences. He has disturbed me. It's present perfect, so has disturbed. Passive, I have been disturbed by him. He has disturbed us. We have been disturbed by him. And he has disturbed her. She has been disturbed by him. So what do we learn from these sentences? Have been, has been plus past participle of the main verb. Alright. The basic formula again. What is it? Have been or has been with the past participle of the main verb. That's it for you to remember in present perfect. Now, present perfect continuous. Children, remember when I told you important points to remember? Over there only I had told you that no passive form. Present perfect continuous, no passive form. Let's move on. Now, we move on to past tense. Simple past. Let's look at the examples. He disturbed me. In the passive voice, it will become I was disturbed by him. He disturbed us. We were disturbed by him. He disturbed her. She was disturbed by him. So what do we learn from here? Was, were plus the past participle of the main verb. That's the simple formula to remember in simple past. That's it. So, shall we move on? Okay. Past tense continued. Past continuous. Active voice, let's look at the example. He was disturbing me. Passive voice, I was being disturbed by him. He was disturbing us. We were being disturbed by him. He was disturbing her. She was being disturbed by him. Now, what do we learn from these sentences? Was being, were being plus past participle of the main verb. Children, it's basically very easy, very simple. You just have to see and you have to understand the form of the be verb. That will say the tense. Alright, let's move on. Alright, so past tense continued. Past perfect. See, in the active voice, he had disturbed me. In the passive voice, I had been disturbed by him. He had disturbed us. We had been disturbed by him. He had disturbed her. She had been disturbed by him. And what's the formula? Had been plus past participle of the main verb. That's it. So this is the formula for this particular passive voice. And remember children, the past perfect continuous, you don't have any passive form. Alright. Past perfect continuous, no passive form. Okay? Let's move on. Future tense, simple future. Same sentence I am taking but explaining it in future. He will disturb me. I shall be disturbed by him. He will disturb us. We shall be disturbed by him. Naughty fella. He will disturb her. She will be disturbed by him. Now children, I hope you see over here that in the first person we are using shall. But over here when it is the third person, we are using will. Will. But this will in the active voice becomes shall in first person passive voice. Remember this. Alright. So what's our formula? Shall be, will be plus past participle of the main verb. Okay. That's just it. So let's move on. Future tense continued. Future continuous, again future continuous, no passive form. Good for us. Future perfect, let's look at the sentences. He will have disturbed me. I shall have been disturbed by him. It's I, so it's shall. He will have disturbed us. We shall have been disturbed by him. It's we, first person, so shall. He will have disturbed her. She will have been disturbed by him. Alright. So again when it is the third person you will retain will. So what's our formula? Shall have been, will have been plus the past participle of the main verb. Alright. Let's move on. Modal passive. What is modal passive? Now children, all of you have done modal verbs recently. So it's fresh in your brains right now. It's just like a cake that is hot in the oven, still fuming. So all of you know what modal verbs are. I'm not going to go into it. I have just written down a few examples over here. And those of you who have still not attended the class on modal verbs or did not see the video on modal verbs, I'm going to attach the link in the description box on modal verbs. So you can go over there, click it and see the modal verbs video. Alright, great. Now let's look at the examples in the active voice. I will punish you. Naughty boy, continuously disturbing from past to present to future, disturbing and disturbing. So this was something inevitable, isn't it? Alright, let's continue. So I will punish you. You will be punished by me. That is the passive form. She can do all the work. The work can be done by her. He could have done it. It could have been done by him. We must maintain order in the classroom or everywhere. Discipline must be maintained. Order must be maintained by us. She might have helped him. He might have been helped by her. The rich should help the poor. The poor should be helped by the rich. Now children, what do we learn from here? You can see that whenever you have only will, can, must or should, you bring the be over here. Be. And of course, the third form of the verb. be and the third form of the verb. Be and the third form of the verb. But when you have, the same be verb takes the form of been and the third form of the verb. Been and the third form of the verb. Without have, you write be, and when you have, you write have and been. Have and been. Clear? I hope it is. So let's move on. Yes, no questions. What are they? In the active voice, I say, do you like it? In the passive voice, I say, is it liked by you? Does she know you? I say, are they known to him? Again, children, I hope you remember known, and it never takes by. Known to over here. You remember this? I told you, you never take by. By is wrong over here. Again, did you tell him the story? Was the story told him by you? Those who were asking me about told to, see, you cannot write to. I hope you remember that. Has he worked out the sums? Have the sums been worked out by him? Children, always remember when you ask the question in a yes no question, that is, do you like it? Yes, I like it. No, I don't like it. So these are yes no questions. In yes no questions, you ask the question with do, does, did. You begin with is, are, was, like this. Just remember it this way. It is going to be easy for you. Alright. And one more way you can always do it is you can change this sentence to statement, and then you can change the voice, and then you can make it a question. That is also another way of doing it, but I think for you, since it is easier, remember it. Do, does, did. Whenever it is in the active voice, you have to change it in the passive voice with is, are, was. That is with the be verbs. Alright. And when it is has, it becomes have. And not necessarily it becomes have, because over here have the sums. Had it been only one sum, then it would have been has the sum been worked out by him. Okay. Has will remain has, or it will change into have depending on the number of the subject. So let's move on, shall we? What are WH questions? They are who, what, all those WH questions. Alright. Let's look at the examples of the WH questions. Who did it? By whom was it done? Who taught you English? By whom were you taught English? How did you do it? How was it done by you? Why did he say this? Why was this said by him? Over here you say said by him. Alright. Just note one thing. I have written it for your benefit. Who is changed to by whom, but all other WH words remain unchanged. You see how over here remained how? Why over here remained why. But who became by whom? Again, who became by whom? So, important note for you to remember, who is changed to by whom, but all other WH words remain unchanged. Alright, let's move on. Let's move on. Imperatives. We all know what imperatives are. So, let's see a few examples. Commands. Let's see in the active voice. Do it. Passive, let it be done. Active, don't tell him anything. Passive, let him not be told anything. Active, read the book. Let the book be read. Active, give me my pen. Passive, let my pen be given to me. Now children, look at this particular sentence over here. That's number 1. Do it. Let it be done. It can also be written, it should be done. You can say with the modal should. It should be done. This modal can be used. This is also another way of changing it to passive. Now, let may introduce both active and passive. In that case, let's move on a little bit for you to see. In active, let him buy a cycle. It's active, but it has let. So what will be the passive of that? Let a cycle be bought by him. Be bought. Okay. Let us forget the quarrel. Some of us keep on fighting and fighting. Let us forget the quarrel. What will be the passive form? Let the quarrel be forgotten. Alright. So that's it for you. Let's move on to imperatives. Requests. Requests. Alright. Active. Please give me a pen. In passive, you are requested to give me a pen. Active. Kindly read the letter. Passive, you are requested to read the letter. Children, the more you practice, the more you will become used to these sentences. They are very easy. You just need to know them. And if you understand them, then they are already there in your muscle memory. Then you will never forget them. Okay, let's move on with a few more examples. Advice. Now here, children, something important for you. Love the children. I'm saying in active. It's an advice that I'm giving you. Passive. The children should be loved. During advice, it is more common to use the modal should. Again, I'm repeating. For advice, it is more common to use should. Don't look at the sun. The sun should not be looked at. Should not be. Alright. Now let's look at a few other ways of writing. Imperatives. Let's look at this slide. Imperatives can be expressed in the passive in another form also. Okay. Now what is it? Just like I said, let's look at the active. Leave the room. You are ordered to leave the room. These sentences can also be said. Nowadays we say them. Lock the door at night. You are advised to lock the door at night. Now lock the door at night is generally an advice. So technically it should take the modal should. But you can also say you are advised to lock the door at night. This way it can also be said. Alright. Now the infinitive. Let's look at the examples of the infinitive. I have to do the work. In passive you will say the work has to be done by me. I want you to leave me alone. I want to be left alone. You are to post the letters. So many letters are here. You have to post them. The letters are to be posted. So you see over here what comes is after the to verb, you give the be and then the third form of the verb. Do becomes done, leave becomes left, post becomes posted. And we add be. Alright, so that's infinitive. And what do I have in the next slide? This is also another way of saying, and we must also know this. It is said, he is said to. Alright, now let's look at the examples. In active, people say that he is 104 years old or 104 years old. Very old man. Okay, now what will we say in passive? It is said that he is 104 years old or he is said to be 104 years old. So either or, both way we can write this. Alright, now I do have a last slide for you, but that I am going to show at last. Just let me tell the quasi-passive in 2 lines. Now children, let's see what we have in this slide. Quasi-passive verbs. What are these verbs? Quasi-passive verbs are active in form. They are active in form but passive in sense. As simple as that. Now, let's look at a few examples. In the active voice, honey is sweet. Yes, it is. When we say it in passive, honey is sweet when it is tasted. Right? Rice sells cheap. Rice is sold cheap. This book reads funny. This book is funny when it is read. The stone feels rough. The stone feels rough when it is felt. So you see, these are special types of verbs and they are known as quasi-passive verbs because they are active in form but passive in sense. Alright, so children, that's it for the day. And before I finish the class today, I would like to say something very important to you. I've been waiting to say this to you for a very long time. So let's not waste any further time and tell what I want to tell. And what is it? This is the last slide for you. Thank you children. Thank you so much for being so supportive and giving me all that love that you have given me all these months. Alright, so that's it for the day. And what will you do? You will stay home, you will stay safe and you will be very, very happy. Bye-bye.